Hi, my name's Wendy Cukier, and we'll get started in just a moment. We're waiting for some folks to join us today. All right. So, as I said, my name's Wendy Cukier, and I am the founder of the Diversity Institute, and I lead the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. Welcome, everyone, to the launch of our State of Women Entrepreneurship in Canada 2022 report. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that I am joining you from Toronto, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Wendat people. And I think more than ever, all of us should renew our commitment to truth and reconciliation. Regardless of where we are across this country, we're joining from traditional Indigenous lands. Please note that simultaneous translation is available for today's session. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should have an interpretation button that will allow you to select the language of your choice. It looks like a little globe, and I'm going to pick English. There are also closed captions for today's session, but unfortunately only in English. And the session is being recorded and will be made available following the event. The Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, I'll talk more about in my presentation, but essentially we are a network of more than 200 organizations, 10 hubs across the country. We operate in French and in English, and really are set up to share knowledge and data to strengthen inclusion in the innovation ecosystem. And I'm thrilled to have the pleasure, once again, of introducing our special guest, the Honorable Mary Yang, who is the Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development. I think she did such a good job in her last appointment. They just keep expanding and expanding and expanding her portfolio. She was first elected as Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill in 2017. Previously, she served as Minister of Small Business Export Promotion and International Trade. I can say from personal experience, she is a devoted community leader who has committed her entire career to public service. She has more than 20 years experience working in education, on women's leadership, job creation, and entrepreneurship. Minister Ng immigrated to Canada from Hong Kong with her family and grew up with a deep understanding of the struggle and eventual success and contribution of many new immigrants. And she is the child of entrepreneurs, and it shows in everything she does. Her years of working for the Ontario Public Service, Ryerson University, the Ontario Ministry of Education, has really contributed to the breadth of her knowledge and her reputation as one of Canada's top performing public sector leaders. One of her first jobs in Ottawa was to serve as the Director of Appointments for the Prime Minister. And I think anybody who is awake and follows social media and LinkedIn and Twitter knows that there's almost nobody with her level of energy, commitment, And I honestly don't know how she does it. I think she was in 4 different countries in different regions of the world in the last couple of weeks. So over to you, Minister.
Well, Wendy, thank you so much for that. How I do it is I am surrounded by extraordinary colleagues, one whom you'll meet very shortly in MP Kayabaga, but also a terrific team. And indeed, working with you and with so many in the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, but across the ecosystem is how I do it. The answer is I don't do it alone. I do it with such tremendous support and with tremendous people across the country. So for that, I thank you. Bonjour tout le monde, and it's great to see everyone here. Before we start, let me also acknowledge that I'm in Ottawa and I'm speaking to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And for those of us who are settlers or even immigrants to Canada, it's important to recognize that Indigenous peoples have always been here and that we all have a role to play in reconciliation. I also want to spend another minute to acknowledge the circumstances in which we meet. And that is that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a grave threat to world peace. And Canada unequivocally condemns Russia's egregious invasion, which is a direct challenge to the rules-based international order that cannot be allowed to succeed. And alongside our allies, Canada stands resolute against authoritarianism and with the democratic Ukraine now and into the future. I want to thank everyone for spending the time with us today. I want to give a special shout out, of course, to Sabine, who does terrific work at the Diversity Institute, and of course, my colleague, Arielle Kayabaga, the Member of Parliament, who you will be hearing from very shortly. I'm thrilled to join you today to mark the release of the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub's 3rd State of the Women Entrepreneurship Report. And the work, Wendy, that you are leading and the work that the Knowledge Hub is doing across the country is just so incredibly important, especially as we are all coming out of a pandemic, working towards that economic recovery and making sure that we drive towards a strong and a sustainable and an inclusive recovery from this pandemic that has disproportionately impacted women, just makes our gathering that much more impactful, and the work that you have found in this report really important. Mais nous savons aussi que les femmes se sont heurtées à des obstacles systémiques au succès bien avant le COVID-19. Now, only 16% of small businesses in Canada are women-owned, which is why back in 2018, our government invested over $6 billion into the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. And that strategy is unlocking a number of things, whether they be financing or resources or developing a supportive ecosystem to help women entrepreneurs in our country to succeed. I often share that while the investment is $6 billion, it's not only the right thing to do, it is the smartest thing that we could be doing in this country, indeed any country, because in Canada, I know that we can add up to $150 billion to the economy by simply fully including women in our economy. I often tell my colleagues around the world, look, and if the world follows suit, $12 trillion can be added to the global economy by fully included women in the economy. But we also have to do more than just those investments. We have to also address the inequities that are faced by women, of course, but also the intersectionalities, including Black women, Indigenous women, differently abled women, and others across the system, which is why the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy is so important. And just to remind everyone, I now think that, since 2018, we've had this strategy on for a few years now, and people often ask me what are the components of the strategy. In fact, I'm explaining it a lot to colleagues, trading partners around the world about the terrific work that you women are doing and that the ecosystems are doing and that the Knowledge Hub is doing. But essentially the strategy is made up of 3 parts. The first part has to do with access to capital. We know that getting access to capital to help businesses start or to grow has been a particular challenge. It's been a challenge because of the barriers that are in the way for women entrepreneurs. And the Knowledge Hub's work has really been helpful, not only in sharing the findings, but helping us make decisions and policy choices in response to what you are finding. And most recently, the issue around helping women entrepreneurs getting access to smaller amounts of capital continue to be a barrier, particularly to help them start and still for many to grow their business, which is why earlier this month, I was very pleased to announce the first delivery partners for the Women's Entrepreneurship Loan Fund. This is going to provide women entrepreneurs with loans of up to $50,000. So that was a direct response to what the Knowledge Hub has told us as a government. The second pillar of this strategy is the need for mentorship, networking, training for women entrepreneurs, access to those business networks that elude or have eluded women and have been barriers. So creating an ecosystem of support was the second part, the second pillar of the women's entrepreneurship strategy. And here, I'm very pleased to start looking at the early numbers, which tells us that the ecosystems has already helped 5,000 women start new businesses. They've helped 7,000 women, existing women-owned businesses grow. So that is terrific because we are seeing those very important results. If I were to just take a look at a couple of examples, this wonderful women founder and CEO of a cloud-based online system that's helping accountants improve their workflow. They come out of the ecosystem in the Northumberland Community Futures Development Corp. And there, her business started, and now it is launching this innovative cloud-based product for her clients. Another really terrific small business based out of Quebec optimizes wastewater treatment, and it has received sales strategy support and hiring a coach from the ecosystem partner in CEO. And here, thanks to this support, the company is exceeding their revenue projections. Those are just a couple of examples of that of that 5,000 to help start and that 7,000 to help grow their existing businesses. But what we also heard, and I know that this year's report is highlighting this as well, but what we also heard is the importance of recognizing intersectionality of diverse women entrepreneurs, and then the more unique barriers that they are facing. So recently I announced a $25 million investment into the ecosystem fund that is specifically going to support intersectionally diverse and underserved women. So again, thank you for the work that is doing the research and helping government make good evidence-based decisions on future policy decisions and funding. Those are two examples. And of course, the third pillar of the women's entrepreneurship strategy is the Knowledge Hub. And here it is about data. As I say, you have to measure it. You do something with with knowledge when you have the knowledge and when you have the data. And the Knowledge Hub also collects best practices. It's also identifying key areas of gaps, two that I just shared, whether it's capital or the ecosystem. So the work that you're doing has been absolutely critical by providing those key insights that we all experienced, that women entrepreneurs experienced during the pandemic, has been incredibly helpful and how they have adapted. One of the areas that I thought was really that was a really good finding, an interesting finding, was that the Knowledge Hub found that 30% of women-owned businesses increase their digital presence through e-commerce. It's a 5% higher than the general population. And here, women entrepreneurs have been bringing their businesses online and boosting their technology. And this, I think, bodes well because we just launched the Canada Digital Adoption Program specifically to help companies get online through e-commerce and to boost their technology to get more digital. So I hope that more women entrepreneurs will benefit from the CDAP program. And throughout COVID, the Knowledge Hub also, they pivoted, just like I think so many businesses and entrepreneurs. And what they did, which I thought was incredibly important, was they brought together the different ecosystems and there to help identify gaps and sharing best practices across the country. So this web that they're able to bring together as the hub and the spokes being the ecosystems and the entrepreneurs, I think has been really terrific. And I want to see them continue this work. I really want to see them continue this work, particularly as the International Trade Minister, where I'm talking about the women's entrepreneurship strategy and these 3 pillars to colleagues across the world. I think that there's even greater opportunity for us to also make those connections. But today, as you know, on the day when we're releasing this 3rd annual report as part of Budget 2021, we have committed to funding and investing an additional $4.2 million for the Knowledge Hub, for it to continue with their partnerships, with their leaderships, and with their research. Nous faisons ce travail. Ça, c'est la bonne chose à faire. Une reprise économique réussie est une reprise inclusive. So that $4.2 million is a terrific announcement today that I get to share with all of you, to the Knowledge Hub, all to say that we're looking forward to their continued work. And now it is my pleasure to pass the floor to my colleague, Arielle Kayabaga, who is the MP for London West and truly a fearless advocate for women, for women's empowerment. And I'm so thrilled that she and I are colleagues and we get to do this work together. Arielle, over to you.
Merci beaucoup, ministre Ng. Merci énormément pour ces mots d'introduction. Mais je dois d'abord être d'accord avec Wendy, que tu sais très bien que tu as tout notre soutien et tu fais ton travail avec excellence et tu continues à soutenir les femmes partout au Canada. Et je suis très fière, personnellement, très fière du travail que tu fais. Si j'aimerais mes salutations à Wendy, Sabine et toutes les personnes qui se joignent avec nous aujourd'hui. Je tiens tout d'abord à souligner que London West, ma circonscription, se trouve sur le territoire des Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, des Lenni-Lenape, des Oneida et des Chippewas des Premières Nations du Thames. Bonjour tout le monde, je me présente, je m'appelle Arielle Kayabaga, je suis la députée de la circonscription de London West. Je suis une fière maman d'un garçon de 12 ans et avec la nouvelle d'aujourd'hui, vous comprenez donc mon émotion. Je sais personnellement ce qui peut arriver quand la diversité, l'inclusion et l'égalité ne sont pas valorisées et protégées. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, je suis très honorée d'être ici pour annoncer un soutien destiné à favoriser l'égalité des genres et la participation des femmes dans l'économie canadienne. Le COVID-19 n'a pas seulement fait ressortir les inégalités, elles ont été exaspérées. Les personnes qui prennent soin des enfants et des plus vulnérables travailleurs de première ligne sont nombreux à avoir été rudement touchés par cette pandémie et une bonne proportion de ces personnes sont bel et bien des femmes. Les obstacles au succès des femmes ne sont pas apparus que dans le COVID-19, ils étaient malheureusement là bien avant. C'est pour cela que depuis 6 ans, notre gouvernement s'est engagé à faire avancer la cause des femmes ici au Canada et dans le monde entier. Nous avons fait des investissements historiques dans ce dossier, notamment en établissant les services de garde à $10, qui sera aussi annoncé aujourd'hui, les congés parentaux payés et législation sur l'équité salariale. Nous avons combattu aussi la violence fondée sur le genre et nous utilisons l'analyse comparative entre les sexes pour élaborer toutes nos politiques. Notre politique étrangère a comme été priorité la promotion des femmes un peu partout dans le monde. Notre gouvernement prend toutes les mesures possibles pour donner aux femmes les moyens de se prendre en main économiquement. C'est inacceptable que seulement 16% des petites entreprises soient détenues par des femmes et que 11% d'entre elles exportent. C'est pourquoi, depuis 2019, par l'entremise de notre stratégie pour les femmes en entrepreneuriat, nous travaillons au développement d'un écosystème de soutien et nous nous employons à débloquer l'accès au financement et aux ressources dont les femmes ont besoin pour réussir. Nous avons adopté une approche englobante, éclairée par des données probables. Enfin, j'aimerais souligner le magnifique travail accompli grâce au portail de connaissances pour les femmes en entrepreneuriat. Ce portail permet aux organisations canadiennes d'entrer en contact les unes avec les autres. L'échange entre les entreprises est essentiel pour créer un écosystème qui est inclusif, qui répond aux divers besoins des femmes entrepreneurs. Aujourd'hui, je suis très fière d'annoncer avec la ministre Eng que le gouvernement du Canada va investir une somme de 4,25 millions de dollars pour assurer que ce portail puisse maintenir ses activités et les accroître ses vastes ressources et ses réseaux déjà bien établis. Ainsi, il pourra axer les efforts sur les communautés racisées, autochtones, noires, les organismes francophones de soutien aux entreprises, les personnes handicapées et d'autres groupes sous-représentés, ce qui favorisera les liens dans l'ensemble de l'écosystème. Le portail est un outil qui nous permet de continuer à supporter les femmes entrepreneurs au Canada. Merci encore une fois de m'avoir invité à parler avec vous et je vous souhaite une bonne journée.
Merci beaucoup. Lovely to meet you. And Minister, as I said, so pleased that you were able to announce the reinvestment in WEKH. We're very grateful, as is the cast of thousands that makes this all possible. So thank you so much for that. We have some time now to have our fireside chat. I don't see the fireside, but that is not neither here nor there. I wanted to start just by giving you a chance to talk a little bit more about the very specific things that you and your government are doing for diverse women, because we know that intersectional lens, which was mentioned, is so critically important.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Wendy, do you want me to jump in there or did you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love these fireside chats with Wendy. I mean, our biggest issue is trying to keep us on time because we often have much to say. So I'm glad that the questions are focused. But so let me just kind of start by recognizing really the work that the Knowledge Hub, has been doing. It's precisely the work that you are doing, but in addition to just the range of work that the ecosystems are doing that tells us sort of what the lived experiences are, but experienced by so many women in many communities across the country. And the reason this work is so important is because it actually allows us, as you heard me say earlier, it allows us as a government to basically make the necessary investments and to keep getting better at the policy design so that what we are doing will really meet the objectives of what we're trying to do, which is which is an inclusive economy where everyone can in fact benefit. And an inclusive economy isn't inclusive unless you are able to make sure everyone participates in it. So racialized entrepreneurs, we know, have had barriers in addition to the barriers that women face. Indigenous women entrepreneurs, same thing. New immigrant entrepreneurs, those that have different abilities. So I'm thrilled that we are going to be able to add the ecosystem support for recognizing those intersectionalities in a way that will provide that kind of support so that everyone truly will be able to benefit. But just picking up a little bit on what Arielle had said, look, as an economic minister that gets to make investments to support women entrepreneurs, whether it is capital and lending or these ecosystems of support, or even the terrific work that the Knowledge Hub is doing across the country, that's only part of the equation. You have to do the other things that actually recognize what a woman's lived experience is. Women raise children, $10 a day childcare, and making sure that there's affordable early learning and childcare is going to be a game changer for women participating in our economy and doing their businesses. Parental leave, also really important. Making sure that we have a gender-based analysis and lens in the design of our public policy at the federal government. These are all social policies that we have that we have implemented as a government, but they are equally important as the investments because they do go hand in hand. And if you don't have them, sort of designed in that way, which is what this government has been doing from day one, the Canada Child Benefit, recognizing that, that when women succeed, if their families are going to succeed, and helping families make those ends meet are incredibly important. So the lived experiences is what we understand through working with women across the country and families across the country. The terrific work that the Knowledge Hub does in a research, in a research framework, hugely important. And then the ability for us to make those decisions, but not just the economic ones, the social ones, which absolutely have a direct correlation to economic prosperity and participation by people. And for us, we have to include everyone in the economy.
Yeah, thanks very much.
I think the next one is my question to you, Wendy, which is, I so appreciate, and the government so appreciates the work that has been done by the Knowledge Hub. And your question earlier was about diverse entrepreneurs. How do you see the Knowledge Hub in the work that you are sort of doing that builds upon your terrific work already? And what more do you think needs to be done to support diverse entrepreneurs based on both your findings and the work that you'll be doing going forward?
Well, I think, first off, I have to say that one of the most important things I think your government did, apart from childcare, was reinstating the long-form census. So I do want to do a shout out to, the work that Stats Canada is doing, because we're so much further ahead today than we were even 5 years ago. And of course, the new census results are coming out, and the commitment not only to looking at entrepreneurship, small business, self-employment in a very different way, but also applying an intersectional lens, gives us way more data to work with than we previously had. They are also doing really interesting work linking, for example, census data to CRA data, so we can look at impacts, we can look at how much money self-employed women are making versus men, and so on. So, I have to say that everything that we do really builds on that foundation. We analyze their data, we supplement their data, and of course we sponsor research that does a deeper dive, because the stats can tell you what the patterns are, but not necessarily the causal factors. And so a lot of the work that we do is trying to do a deeper dive into specific populations, the lived experience of some of the groups that you mentioned, trying to understand policies and programs. As you know, we've done a lot of work over the last year on microfinancing, microloans, procurement as an instrument, international codes governing financial institutions and VCs and so on, to see where we can learn as Canada from other jurisdictions, but also to encourage sharing of best practices and what works across the ecosystem. I think in terms of specifically digging in on issues around diverse women, I think of some of our findings during COVID and the work, for example, that BPPA did, which showed that Black entrepreneurs, men and women, were twice as hard hit by COVID, half as likely to get access to support. And I know the Black entrepreneurship strategy is going a long way to address that. But when we have Black women entrepreneurs, as our study of the Rise Up data showed, there are multiple layers of barriers, and often there's trauma. We know about intergenerational trauma when we look at Indigenous women entrepreneurs. We know that half of Indigenous women entrepreneurs are in rural communities and don't have access to basic infrastructure. But I think the more we understand the experiences of different populations, the more we can target programs and policies accordingly. And of course, going forward, now that we've got a couple of years under our belt and we have a better understanding and there's more data available, I really hope that we can dig in more deeply into what works, where the impacts are. And also, as you know, we've talked about this a lot, how investing $1 in women entrepreneurs is probably one of the best investments government can make. And we've started to do that work of looking at what you get when you invest $5 million in SheEO or in one of the WEKH organizations and so on. And dollar for dollar, jobs created, investments, sustainability, impact on the Sustainable Development Goals, and so on. I think we can argue it's one of the best returns on investment your government can get. So I think the data is not an end in itself. It's a means to doing a better job and rebuilding better. I think the next question is for me, and that is to talk a little bit about what your priorities are going forward to help ensure the success of women entrepreneurs, especially bringing to bear your intersecting roles with your portfolio in trade, your portfolio in economic development, and your portfolio in small business.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. The title is a bit long, but what I would say is that I'm Canada's Minister of Startup, Scale Up, and Access New Markets, right? And really, Canada's small businesses make up small and medium-sized businesses make up 99% of all of our businesses in the country. It's precisely why the Prime Minister put the two roles together. So I've been the International Trade Minister and the Small Business Minister for since 2019, and the Prime Minister recognized that if disproportionately our businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises, and that Canada is a trading nation, like 1 out of 6 jobs relate to trade. 2/3 of our economy relates to trade. We are a country that is 38 million people, and yet Canada is the only G7 country with a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. We have these trade agreements in very important economic zones, whether it's here in North America through the, the new NAFTA with Canada, US, and Mexico. We have access to the European market through CETA. We have access to the Asia Pacific market through the CPTPP. I've just announced that I'm, proceeding negotiations for early progress agreement with India. I just did that a couple of weeks ago when I was there. We're in discussions, negotiations with Indonesia, as well as the ASEAN nations, which form a very important and significant economies in Southeast Asia. But that, trade agreements are only that. Already Canada has access to some, 65-70% of the world's economy. So it's only that. But given the nature of our businesses, and when you look at women-owned businesses, 16% of them are women, and only 11% of that are exporting or trading. We just have to do a better job. And that is why I have the title that I have. It is helping businesses start, but helping them scale up here in Canada, but helping them scale up and grow through these global opportunities, I think that is essentially the job. And when I look at, a really great program that we put out, it's called the Trade Accelerator Program. It's top of mind just because I just literally saw some of the numbers that came in through that. But we needed to improve Canada's export capacity among our small and medium-sized businesses. I know that businesses that have gone through this program have actually seen a 30% revenue increase directly coming from exports and an 18% increase overall. The small and medium-sized businesses that went through that program saw an increase of hiring at least, 1.7 kind of a person on their payroll. Here's the other thing that I thought was really heartening, because I say this a lot. I say Canada should be so well positioned to be trading around the world because we are a country of people who come from around the world. We all have those experiences, And those experiences should actually, I mean, you know, we're addressing them as barriers because they've been barriers for people participating in the Canadian economy. We should really be looking at it the other way around, which is that because we come from around the world, that lived experience from our diaspora community should really give us an advantage to be able to trade around the world. And this number was really interesting, you know, out of the Trade Accelerator Program, also known as, you know, people call it TAP. But in 2019-20, 43% of the entrepreneurs were diverse, underrepresented, and SMEs into that program. In 2021-22, so, you know, in this time that the federal government has been supporting this all across the country, that number now is 79%. 79%. Those are the kinds of gains we need to be making. But to answer, you know, sort of the macro question, trade and small business and economic development all go hand in hand because of the kind of country we are, and of our ability and our desire to help our smallest of businesses get rid of those barriers, but get the information, provide those supports in such a way that they're not only growing in Canada, but they're growing into those markets abroad, anchored in Canada. And that's how we create economic, that's a really important way to create economic growth in Canada. So that's how the two parts of my, you know, the two parts of my portfolio sort of come together. But now, these days, I just sort of see it as, you know, as that's the task. The task is let's help grow and grow here, but grow in Canada by growing internationally.
I think, you know, our brand as Canadians is really grounded in that diversity, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing that a lot of people miss is that Canada's economy is fundamentally different than the US economy. In the US, 50% of jobs are with large business. In Canada, 90% of jobs are with SMEs. And that creates a radically different dynamic. So I really appreciate your efforts in helping grow export generally, but also we're seeing the divide between men and women entrepreneurs become narrower and narrower and narrower.
Well, that's absolutely right, Wendy. I mean, and this sort of has me asking you the next question, which is, why is that data so important? Like, from your point of view, why is the Knowledge Hub so important, and why is it so important to the ecosystem? I think that many people know, but I think it's very well worth to actually say it and say it out loud and explain it to people.
Yeah, well, you know, first off, I sort of answered it, I think, in the last question. What gets measured gets done. You need data to know where you are so you can set targets and frankly, have transparency and accountability around moving them forward. You need data to understand the different experiences. You know, you talk about exporting, as you noted, newcomer entrepreneurs are more likely to export. Indigenous entrepreneurs are more likely to export. That becomes hugely important to understand when we're devising strategies. And yet we also know that both immigrant and Indigenous entrepreneurs face multiple layers of barriers. We know that intersectional lens is critically important. For the first time this year, through partnerships with GLCC, which is the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, we've started to do a deep dive, for example, in the issues that face people from that community in running their business. And if we think that women generally face barriers, when you add to that differences in sexual orientation, gender identity, again, those barriers pile up. You know, we're able to use data to do a deep dive, as I mentioned, into Black women entrepreneurs, but also we've had a lot of success, I think, in really exploring the dynamics of Indigenous women entrepreneurs. And thanks to the work of Ashley Richard and the the Lift Collective and our partners at CCAB, we've really got some insights into how the dynamics are different from the very conceptualization of what an entrepreneur is. And that's based on research, understanding that Indigenous women entrepreneurs don't want to be Bill Gates. They want to build their communities and contribute to the community. And you really have to dig in there. You have to understand that the tax provisions that govern on reserve Indigenous women entrepreneurs have a very different impact in their decisions, for example, to incorporate or not. So, from my point of view, as I said, I think, data's the new oil, as they say, and we really need good data, but we also need insights into lived experience and to understand programs, policies, practices, and their impacts.
Yeah, Wendy, on that point, I mean, as I was reading the report, the findings about the attributes that are different between women entrepreneurs and men entrepreneurs are really, really important, because a way of measuring could be, the growth and the size of a company, and that's the only measurement. The other is that the social enterprising importance by many women entrepreneurs, as in it is, the purposefulness of the business is equally important to to sort of the maximum profit, or the profit being the only thing. But if you think about it, for us, the work that you do informs and helps us in public policy design, because if you take a look at it as, as the benefits to the Canadian society, then what the economic measures are measured in different ways. And we've got to be able to understand that in such a way that helps us with better design. So the deep dive that you do actually is helping that, and understanding the characteristically different between women entrepreneurs and their male counterparts has been tremendously successful. I saw a couple of comments in the Q&A there about exporting and services or scaling up. So I know that you're digging into that in terms of scaling up, but around export and services, I think that there is a tremendous opportunity there for women enterprises in the services sector to export in a way that I would say that writ large, but for women entrepreneurs for sure. So I also want to thank those who have been writing in the Q&A, and just know that I don't get to respond to all of them, but I certainly have had a chance to scroll through and read, and have read them. So thank you so much.
And we will take all those questions, because we're tight on time, and we will craft responses or give the minister an opportunity to respond. So thank you again. Very sorry for taking so much of your time and keeping you late, but it's always a pleasure to hear from you and to see you in action. So
I never think I'm late. I mean, the team does, but I never do. I mean, I just sort of keep going, but then I do know that they put a clock on it. So Wendy, thanks. It's so great. And to all of your team and to all of the partners across the country for the Knowledge Hub, just a tremendous thank you. And to all of the women entrepreneurs, bravo. Man, you make us proud as Canadians. So thank you.
Thanks so much. So I am now going to try to bridge the time-space continuum and go to a presentation that's supposed to be a bit longer, but you can all read the report. So I'm going to zoom through this really, really quickly. The presentation is available in both French and English, and I'll try to make up for my long-winded discussion earlier by abbreviating the presentation and making sure that Sabine, Soumare, and the entrepreneurs who have joined us today have time to share their perspectives. So can I just get a confirmation from my team that you can see the slideshow?
That's perfect, Wendy.
Okay, great. So I think we've talked about WEKH. What is most important to me is to reinforce that we have 10 hubs across the country to provide regional perspectives, to provide input, to share, but we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other partners who also contribute. I think the point was made that we don't see our role simply as supporting organizations with women in the title, although that's part of what we do, and we work closely with WEKH, we work closely with CEO, we work closely with other organizations that have been funded through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy. But we also see our role as opening doors throughout the ecosystem, whether we're talking about procurement policies in government and in large customers, whether we're talking about, someone put in the chat the point about financial institutions, and frankly, a lot of the processes were designed based on men entrepreneurs in manufacturing and technology. And we're trying to reevaluate even how risk is assessed in order to give women and diverse entrepreneurs fairer access to financing. We're looking at post-secondary institutions. I work in an entrepreneurship school, and I can tell you there's bias embedded in what we teach, how we teach, the case studies, and so on. We're looking at individual level capacity building, whether it's, inspiring women with the See It, Be It campaign, or supporting training, or trying to reorient many of the decision makers who really do not recognize the extent to which their bias and microaggressions present barriers. So we really do have a systems level approach. And, we are seeing some encouraging trends in spite of COVID, which hit women entrepreneurs harder than any other entrepreneurs. We have seen an increase in the proportion of SMEs that are majority owned by women. We have seen an increase in the proportion of self-employed women, although the last year there's a bit of a decline. And we know that the structure, as the minister mentioned, of women's entrepreneurship is different. It more focused on services and therefore more vulnerable as a result of COVID. We know there are differences based on regional variations and provinces, largely tied to the structure, again, of the economy. And one of the things we've started looking more and more at is, for example, rural and farming women entrepreneurs, because often they're not majority owners of businesses, but they're partners in the family farm or the family agribusiness. And so we're trying to figure out how to address that. We've started looking more and more, inspired partly by CEO, in the impact that women entrepreneurs have on the sustainable development goals and their role in sustainability. And we were thrilled to partner with BMO, the Bank of Montreal, on their Celebrating Women grant, and mining that data to better understand how women entrepreneurs engage in sustainable businesses and practices. And so there were 1,000 applicants from across Canada and the United States, and we saw some incredibly innovative, interesting programs and projects and companies and practices. And what was so interesting was that many of these businesses hit multiple sustainable development goals. And so you can read about that. We also have started poking around more at the small number, but nevertheless important number of women founders involved in unicorns, those, or soonicorns as we call them. And those are companies that have hit $1 billion. Very small sample, but you can see quite a significant increase in women founders among the Canadian unicorn startups. We also, and the minister mentioned some of these examples, we've looked a bit at the impact of the Women Entrepreneurship strategy funding. You can read about some of these companies. Many doubled their market share in spite of COVID. Maybe many went abroad and broke into international markets in ways they might not otherwise have. We've also, of course, continued to consider the impact of the COVID pandemic on women entrepreneurs. And the She session, I'm on a panel later today to talk about that more broadly. There's no doubt that the data, the research really shone a light on the extent to which women, particularly women with caregiving responsibilities, either for children or for aging parents, were hard hit by COVID and the multiplier effects of those factors, coupled with the fact that women were more likely to be involved in sectors hit hardest by COVID. There are some encouraging trends that suggest that recovery is happening, but there's no doubt that lots remains to be done. And we know that in addition to the economic toll and as I mentioned, the burden of unpaid work, good news, fingers crossed, coming out of Ontario with respect to the childcare policy, I hope, today, but also mental health. We know there's more and more attention being focused on the mental health issues that entrepreneurs face, partly as a result of the nature of the work, the pressures, the isolation. But women have been far harder hit during COVID as a result of that. Yet, in spite of this, we see that many women entrepreneurs are incredibly resilient and have innovative in ways that perhaps they would not have had it not been necessary because of COVID. We've continued to do our work focusing on Black women entrepreneurs in partnership with many other organizations to really get insights into the particular needs of Black women entrepreneurs. And I must say that that for me, some of the lessons over the last couple of years are really around the impact of trauma, both intergenerational trauma and its frequency, particularly when we talk to Indigenous women entrepreneurs, but also the trauma that many Black women face as a result of anti-Black racism. The extent to which Black women entrepreneurs have often fled the workplace, not just because of sexism, which we see generally, but because of anti-Black racism as well. So we will continue to dig into those issues. And as I said, with Indigenous women entrepreneurs, the impact of intergenerational trauma and how you design programs and supports to deal with those realities, as well as with the reality that many Indigenous women entrepreneurs are on reserve in rural communities without infrastructure, without running water, certainly without high-speed internet, and so on, is critically important. And our partners are key to our work there. The minister talked about immigrant women entrepreneurs. We continue to do research, and we run a number of programs targeting refugee and newcomer women, because we know there's huge capacity there to create jobs and drive economic development. This year, we've looked more deeply into the experience of women entrepreneurs living with disabilities, and Wanda Deschamps did some focus groups and consultations to complement the rather limited large-scale data that exists. At the same time, we know cognitive differences, the very thing that can challenge people in traditional workplaces, can be a real asset for entrepreneurs. And so we're exploring that more deeply. As I mentioned, this year we started looking more at 2S LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs with our partners at Pride at Work, as well as the Chamber of Commerce and others. There's some really interesting relationships, I think, about between the the work we're doing on the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, as well as the work with the 50/30 Challenge, which is a first in world commitment to advance representation of the 2S LGBTQ plus community in leadership roles and on boards. And we know that many of the stereotypes that plague women entrepreneurs have doubly negative impacts on those from the 2S LGBTQ2 plus community. So when we think about our work, we think about work at the societal level. We think about policies like childcare. We think about the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy or the Black Entrepreneurship Strategy and its intersections. We're looking more at voluntary codes, not just the 50/30 Challenge, but also procurement initiatives, as well as the potential to either use regulation or voluntary codes as they have in the UK to really accelerate inclusion in access to financing for financial institutions, investors, as well as VCs. And we know, and this was mentioned in the chat, we know that the criteria used to assess risk, we know that the term sheets that women and diverse entrepreneurs are given are based on historic patterns of assessing risk that have embedded bias. So while it is true that there may be opportunities to improve financial literacy, et cetera, we have to recognize that there are real challenges that remain in the financial sector, and we have to work hard to increase transparency there and get action. We believe more attention is required on microloans and microgrants because the majority of businesses in Canada start with less than $5,000, and yet it's harder in Canada to get a micro loan or a micro grant than it is in many emerging economies. We're looking at the VC sector. We're working with many of the organizations that are really doubling down on trying to improve representation of women among VCs and also increase access for women entrepreneurs to venture capital. We're looking at accelerators and incubators because we know they're not necessarily supportive of women. And then, of course, there are all the issues around entrepreneurship training and access to technology, self-efficacy, wraparound supports, and so on. So, you know, when we think of the way forward, we're really going to continue to use data as a tool to drive change, to apply a gender and diversity lens to everything that we do, to really push some reframing. And the minister mentioned this, where we think about entrepreneurship not just as a driver of jobs, although it definitely is, or innovation or exports, but also as a way to make Canada more sustainable and more equitable. And I think what I will do is leave it there because you're going to get to hear from some firsthand from some important movers and shakers. And I'll just end by saying, you know, from our perspective, it really is important to challenge the stereotypes of entrepreneurs because they're not all like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. And so our See It, Be It campaign, remains one of the important pillars of our work going forward. Thank you very much. And at this point, I would like to hand it off to my colleague, Sabine Soumare, who is the relatively new Executive Director of the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. Merci, Sabine.
Thank you, Wendy. Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation. So much information on the State of Women Entrepreneurship 3.0 2022, and a big thank you to the Minister as well. I think this fireside chat is the best way to kick off this panel discussion. And I am here today with 5 panelists and we will be talking about their journey as women entrepreneurs and the programs and supports available to start and grow a business. So we're really happy to have them today. I also want to say a few things about the report. So the report is now available in English and en français, as Wendy mentioned, and you should have it in the chat box. So feel free to download it and share in your network. So now, I first want to welcome Abba Mortley, who is the founder of Cher-Mere. I also want to say welcome to Alisha Esmail, who is the founder of roadcoffee.co. Connie Stacey, president of Growing Greener Innovations. Sylvie Ouellette, president of Versatil. And last but not least, Tanya Zurock, founder of Prairie soap company. Ladies, we have 30 minutes and I want to give you some time to share to share about your story, about your journey, and about the resources and supports that you have found to grow your business. But first, I will give you 3 minutes to, like I said, briefly introduce yourself and your company. So I will start with you, Abba.
Oh gosh, I always get to kick it off. My name beginning with A often. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here and thanks for the opportunity. My family has been making personal care products for skin, hair, and body for people of color in Trinidad and Tobago for over 35 years. And almost 10 years ago, I decided to bring those products via spa services to Kingston, Ontario. So we opened our first location where we do personal care and we use all our products that we make in that. And opened a second location a couple of years ago. And as part of that journey, especially with COVID, it was compounded with the fact that obviously personal care services were very much affected. And I know the minister spoke about how many women businesses are serviced, and we were severely impacted, having 2 business locations that we still had to pay rent and revenue for and whatever else, but being closed. And so had to be very innovative to try to figure out how to get some income to support. And was very fortunate to do things such as the Rise Up pitch, where I was able to get a COVID grant of $10,000 to help with some marketing. Because what we ended up doing, because we are fortunate and we make our own product, we decided, how about if we were to package things in such a way that we can deliver a spa at home to people. So we started to make like a facial in a box, a pedicure in a box, a manicure in a box, which we started to first give to our clients in Kingston and then to export and have a bigger strategy to Toronto and different areas. And that was really successful. And so continuing now, because it's a long road ahead of recovery, especially for service industry, to continue to try to build on our products, because we know that's a tangible, valuable thing that we've had, great data and record for 35 years on, but just taking that step about marketing and how to get that out there. And so that's kind of where we are and what we're using. But really happy to be here today, really proud of where we've gotten, and lots of obstacles, but challenges. But I think as women, we know how to think outside the box and figure out solutions to things. Not that should be the way that we have to do things. We should also have the opportunities that go hand in hand with that. And so really glad to see that there are platforms such as these and Paro and WEKH and Kingston for Queens and lots of economic development groups that are helping to support women as we move forward. So hopefully that's a good kickoff, and that's it for me.
It's a good kickoff. And Abba, if I'm not mistaken, you also joined us from Trinidad. So I wonder if you go to Trinidad, but that's another conversation, and you may speak of that after. So Alisha, welcome. Tell us, and please let us know where you're from, because it's ladies from across the country. So we have Alberta, we have Ontario, we have Quebec. So I just want to make sure we can also locate you.
I'm Alisha. I'm coming in from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan this morning. So thanks for having me. A little bit about me. My background is actually in international development. So I spent about 6.5 years working overseas in places like Haiti, South Africa, Jordan, Nepal, Panama. And in my free time, I would often hang out on coffee and tea farms. I'd get to know the farmers and their families. I'd drink tea with their grandmas and play soccer with their kids. And I started to learn very quickly how the supply chain worked from their side of the world, and how the inefficiencies and the systemic injustices kept them in poverty cycles. And it was very interesting to me. And then I'd come back to the West, and the first thing I would do was spend $5 on a coffee in the airport. And so eventually, after a few years, that bothered me enough that I decided to move home to Canada to try and change that and make a difference. And so I started Road Coffee as a way to bridge the gap between coffee farmers and coffee drinkers. And in our industry, we say it's kind of our dirty little secret that coffee producers often get paid below cost of goods. Now, we all know no one can have a thriving, sustainable business if you're getting paid below your cost of production. And so we've created our own sourcing model where we pay farmers not only above cost of production, but we come alongside them and we offer them microloans because access to finances is a big problem for them. And so I loved the talk about microloans this morning. It was mentioned a few times, so very cool. We launched our own microloan program a few years ago where we're able to offer farmers small loans and they can purchase fertilizer, small equipment, whatever they need to help create a more sustainable business model and get them to that next level. And then we bring that coffee in here, we roast it, package it, and partner with a number of cafes, restaurants, retail locations. We have an amazing corporate program. And of course, e-commerce has become a big part of our business model since the pandemic started. So that's a little bit about what we do and a little bit about myself.
Thank you, Alisha. Over to you, Connie.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm coming in from Edmonton this morning, so it's nice and bright and early here. So I am the founder and inventor of the Grange Power System. Our company is called the Growing Greener Innovations. And we create advanced battery energy storage systems. And it actually kicked off specifically to help women, which a lot of people don't get the immediate jump there. How do you go from wanting to help women to making batteries? But in fact, what we did was I was looking at energy poverty and realizing that to solve the greater energy poverty problem, which is very heavily affecting women, we had to find a way to make energy solutions accessible. And the accessibility wasn't just location, it was about removing the need for technicians and engineers. So that's what we did, is we set out to make intelligent batteries. And we have been quite successful in the last couple of years in being able to do that. Our systems can power an individual person or a refugee camp of 1 million people. And they have quite a significant impact in terms of GHG. So we're quite fortunate to have some work with the Canadian Department of Defense, which of course, they do quite a few camps where they've traditionally run on diesel generators. And our current project with them shows that per camp per year, our system can save them over 10,000 tons of GHG. And that's one camp. Plus over $4 million in savings. So it's a really, really big impact and we're super excited to be involved in it. I really got a lot of the traction we've gained actually has come from some of the supports of the Canadian government, including I was a first cohort in the TAP program, which is where I met Mary originally. And then I met her again at a CGLCC event. So I know she walks the talk. And we have used the Trade Commissioner Service through Global Affairs. And if you're not familiar with it, strongly recommend you get involved with them. They have been incredible supporters of our journey. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Connie. And you also mentioned a couple of support and resources. So something that we'll be discussing later. And I also want to share that or mention that we have put your the website, so your company, in the chat box. So please, to the audience, feel free to visit the website to learn more about our panelists. Over to you, Sylvie. And your mic is, open your mic, please. Thank you.
We always do that. Very happy to be here today. So I'm coming from the National Capital Region. I'm actually in Cantley, on the 10 minutes from Ottawa. So this is where I am. So my background has been in information technology. I spent in large corporation, always on IT for sort of like about 18 years. And in 2010, decided that I sort of had enough of flying all over the world and always being gone. And I decided that I wanted to build my own company. And I met somebody that was also wanted to do that, and that she was in technology as well. And I said, okay, so we both quit our job, and we've been doing our business now for 12 years. It's been an interesting journey. Being in IT. So what I've always loved is data. And like at the end of the day, data is the big thing right now going on. There's so much of it. And so what we enjoy doing is working with organizations, leveraging their data where we can, infuse it with artificial intelligence. And we focus as well on cybersecurity. There's a big, we all know right now, we all can be all have cyber attacks and stuff, and it really impacts as well the small medium businesses. The cost of that is very big, and so we're growing in that field, and we're helping organization and that make sure that they stay secure, because the cost of the data breach is quite high. So that's what I enjoy doing, and my business partners were the two women-owned, and I'm proud to say that we are a women-owned, Indigenous, and LGBTQ owned company. So I am part of all the councils: WEB, CCAB, CAMC, CGLCC. I'm part of a lot of the networking is very good.
Well, wonderful. And plus you are in a men-dominated industry, and same for you, Connie. So great job on that. Like the percentage of the data shows that women in this industry are so little. So I'm proud to have two of you at least today. So we can wait to hear from you more. Over to you, Tanya.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good morning.
Connie, I'm like you. I'm in Edmonton. Nice to see you again. So I am the founder and president of Wild Prairie Soap Company. We are a manufacturer similar to ABBA. We create products that make skin wildly happy, is what we like to say. Our core product is our natural soap, which we make with olive oil and other great nourishing ingredients. And I started the company really truly by accident. I didn't come into entrepreneurship knowing that that was going to be my life work, but here we are, and it's today still my passion. So I'm really happy about that. So I started the company to help my kids with their really dry, sensitive skin. And at the urging of other people who started using our products as well, it was clear that, I needed to get these products out into the marketplace back when, there weren't as many options for the kind of products that we made. So I started in 1998 making soap in my kitchen. And today we export to Japan. And we have a brand new South Korean partner, and our products will be launching there as soon as our container reaches their shores in the next 5 days, which is pretty exciting for us. But, our journey has been, it was a long journey to get to an export position, but I can honestly say that, receiving the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy Grant in 2019 really was a pivotal point for us. It helped us to scale up our manufacturing, buy new tanks, new scales. We moved into a new production facility. We used part of the funds to support our marketing and marketing material supports to attract an audience on a more global scale, and to be able to travel and take part in trade shows in other parts of the world. So in 2019, we also signed an exclusive distribution contract with Japan, and in doing so ended up in over 200 stores in Japan, which we're really proud of. And it also allowed us to hire 8 new people to our team. It increased our revenue by over 30% in the last 2.5 years. Despite COVID and the challenges that it also, gave to us. It also, as a soap making company, allowed us to help support those in need. We started an Accessible Soap for All program where we provided free soap to community service organizations who had clients in need, and gave them some really great products to help keep them safe. We also used funding from, CAP funding to help improve our manufacturing and increase our production levels. And like Connie, we have taken part in the TAP program, or the Trade Accelerator program, which really was a great starting point to figuring out where we wanted to be, how we wanted to get there, and what we needed to do to get there. So if anyone who's listening wants to know more about the TAP program, I can say that it's a really valuable program to help companies develop their export plans. So we're really happy to say that we are, as Minister Ng mentioned, one of the 11% of women-owned companies, much like all of you, who are exporting to other parts of the world, and that's pretty exciting. And exporting, I feel like, has made us feel like a startup again, because it's a whole new world of learning and growing. And we have to thank also the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service for really being a great support, and again, as Connie said, really valuable resource for women in business. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tanya. And since you've mentioned, like I said again, like resources and supports available, I wonder if that's a different question. I did not have that on my script, but I want to hear, or I want to have some advice. We have in the audience probably women entrepreneurs who want to start a business internationally or grow their business internationally. So any advice? What's the best thing to do, or what to avoid? You and given that you're also in Japan, and then I believe launching also in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what would you say?
Yeah, honestly, I think you just have to have a really solid plan and know what you are trying to accomplish, and build your goals out as you understand what your needs are. And I think that's the value of the Trade Accelerator program, is it really forces you to develop that plan for your business, your company, and your goals. So, I would say that for us was a really pivotal part of our journey.
Okay. And what about you, Abba? I've mentioned that you are in Trinidad, and I was joking that perhaps you will launch your product there, but any advice or any in terms of supports that you had to grow your business, or anything to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so our products actually started in Trinidad. That's where I'm from. And then I brought it to Canada. So, but yeah, I agree. And I echo what Tanya said. The TAP program was a great program, because we are also kind of trying to prepare ourselves to figure out what markets work best based on, what we've done and where we should be going. And it is a great way to kind of align your ideas with what your goals or your dreams would be, so that you can have tangible points of contacts and places to go. So I would tell people to, first start on a level of your community. Like, I think, I was exposed to TAP and other stuff through Kingston Economic Recovery. Like, I'm in Kingston, and there's also like a Queens WEKH program. So there are lots of programs there on the ground. So I would say start in your community and find out who those programs and where those programs are, because they have feeders that feed into bigger things, and they can guide you as to where you can start and where you can go and where those opportunities are. And that's been really helpful along the way. And don't be afraid to reach out. Like, I think sometimes we are afraid that our ideas aren't big enough or too big or whatever it may be, or there's just that fear of the next step. And I think everybody feels that way. And so just knowing that no idea is a bad idea, it can be tailored anyway, and just like reach out to those people, and those people will guide you to other people. And even if it's just the support to have that conversation and saying like, this is how I'm feeling today, it's just a great support network to have. So just build that support, and that will feed into contacts, and that will continue to grow into other opportunities.
And you're opening a second location, and that's what I have in my notes, Cher-Mere Day Spa. So a second location in Kingston. So
we did. So we have two. So yeah, so we have one downtown, one in the West End, and now we're looking to see where else we go and how else we kind of move, not just from the spa, but focus onto the products and get those products distributed, not only exporting it, but in other areas in Canada, and where we kind of strategically start kind of going and infiltrating that way.
And that will be definitely a strategic move, because with COVID, you need to think ahead and make sure that your business plan and everything will will be on place once you open a second location or third location, because that's like, as we know, businesses have been closed, and so it's a good story to say that you have opened a second location, and we just wish you can expand even more. And Alisha, anything on the supports that you have found, or any advice for the audience?
Yeah, the Women Entrepreneurship Fund was very helpful for us, especially receiving it in 2019 before the pandemic. We had no idea how helpful that would have been. Just helping us get to that next level before the pandemic hit really enabled us to be able to pivot and adjust so that we were able to have back-to-back growth years. Despite, like, when the pandemic first hit, 95% of our contracts went on pause. And having that stability really helped us, pivot and maneuver to grow, especially on e-commerce. But I'd say, similar to what Ava said, get connected locally, because a lot of the local incubators or people, the local hubs that are connected to what you guys are doing really helps with not only community, but it could be where to find funding, whether it's introduction to the National Research Council. It's through our local contacts here. We're currently in the China Accelerator, and we're with companies across Canada, and it's super, super helpful. And so from mentorship to funding opportunities, starting in that local community, I find is super helpful, because even here we have, Startup TNT, WEKH, and of course, a number of other accelerators.
Mm-hmm. And Connie, back to you. And you have been funded by the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, so the WEKH Fund. What did you do since you've received the funds, and what did you do, and what's your story related to the WEKH Fund?
Well, and we actually have benefited in a number of different ways. I'm going to say again, because I'm a huge cheerleader for the Global Affairs Trade Commissioners. For those who are looking to export, honestly, they are your best resource to get started with. I really highly recommend them. But there have been a number of other programs and things that we've participated in as well. And among those have been through things like SheEO, other diverse supplier type programs and things like that. So they've been a little bit here and a little bit there. We weren't, unfortunately, successful in the original application for the Women Entrepreneurship Fund, though I hope maybe in the future we'll have other opportunities. The interesting thing for us has been, as you said, we're a intersectional owned business that really falls into a lot of cracks, unfortunately. And we're in a very heavily male-dominated field. So some of these programs have been just instrumental in terms of getting us in front of potential buyers. And I'll give just a really quick kind of success story on just how important the Government of Canada's work has been. The Trade Commissioner and I'm going to leave a little bit of blanks in there because contracts aren't signed yet, but the Trade Commissioner in India, or one of them, has been so prolific in providing opportunities for us. We're actually looking at both a contract to supply energy solutions for 40,000 homes that are in unserviced areas. So these are people who are in energy poverty, which is really close to my heart, and an opportunity with one of the utility companies in India where the projects could be very, very large, let's say that. And those really came from the opportunities that we had through the Government of Canada. And in particular, a lot of that came through introductions through programs like the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund, or Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. It's very early here. I haven't had a lot of coffee.
It's okay. Alisha will send you some.
Perfect.
What about you, Sylvie?
Yeah, so we also got the Women Entrepreneurship Fund. So I think that was also very good for us just before COVID as well. Got us to focus on our growth, marketing, some research and development. And then after that, even though COVID hit, we got some funding as well from the National Research Council. We've got some funds, a challenge that we're doing right now with ISED. We've got support from the BDC. We also got support from IBM because we are a business partner of IBM. They also, supported us in our growth and everything. So I think we've been very lucky. So even though COVID hit for us, our revenue is increasing over 50% every year. So the growth is quite big, actually. So that leveraging all these different programs is very important. And as we're going into building our own solutions and IP, I think I'm going to definitely look at the TAP program, try to see, because then we can prepare ourselves for that so that we can export as well at one point. So I think, the government has been there, and also I think large corporation as well, when they can support us because we have their expertise. I think that also helps.
Thank you, Sylvie. And I'm looking at the time, it's already 10:27. Very important conversation, many resources, many links in the chat box for the audience. I want to thank you for being here. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Connie. I know it's very early, but it's time for you to, we'll just let you go now, and I will give it over to Wendy for the closing remarks. Thank you again, ladies.
Thanks so much. And most of you, certainly Connie, I've met you before, but most of you I'm meeting for the first time, and this was fabulous conversation. We could have gone on for much longer, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that. Thanks everybody for joining the session. The report is words on paper. It's really taking the words on paper, taking the ideas, taking the lessons learned and translating them into action. And I feel like we have a lot of commitment at many levels among stakeholders in the ecosystem to continue the progress that we've made in spite of COVID. So please stay in touch. There will be an opportunity to give us feedback. We will, I promise, follow up on the many questions that are in the Q&A. We just, as you saw, ran out of time. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today in a very energizing and inspiring discussion. Thank you so much.